Well, hello, and welcome to the Coaching Business Spotlight Show. I'm your host, Kat Knecht, and I'm excited to share with you the many soul driven strategies there are to help you succeed in your business and your life. And today, we're going to take a look at the Enneagram, what it is, and how to use it to enhance your coaching. Now, I love this type of personality test as a way to learn more about myself. I have used a lot of different kinds of typing. It's something I'm fascinated with. One of my most dramatic experiences was with the Coactive Leadership training program. They had a typing back 20 or so years ago when I went through the program called soul typing. And this typing was in person and it was very physical. One of the aspects that really impressed me was that the leader would get us into an actual physical stance that was our type, and then he could not knock us over. And this guy was really big and strong. And I got into my stance and he could not knock me over. But what I got from the actual assessment and typing was some information about myself that was really, really useful. I found like, oh, now I understand myself better. I have this also with the love languages. I did the love languages assessment probably about the same time. And one of the things that I really learned with that assessment was some things about my first marriage that had not worked out so well. I got some information and it was like, oh, I see. I wasn't being loved the way that I needed to. And I was also not loving to my first husband in the way that he probably needed. One assessment I love is called DISC, DISC, and I learned a lot about my current husband, Curtis, with that. We did it together. It was with our church. There were maybe like 20 people, and he got typed a high D, which in that assessment is for dominance. And it really explained a lot about him and our relationship. So there are lots of different assessments, personality tests, ways of finding out about who you are, what makes you tick, so that you can express yourself more fully. And I've had a curiosity about the Enneagram for a long time. So I'm thrilled to have as my guest today an Enneagram expert, Cai Delumpa. He is a leader, coach, trainer. He thrives on creating environments filled with connection, courage, and compassion. His specialties are executive coaching, team performance coaching, and leadership training. This is all done with his life and business partner, Monique, and his business is called Hive Leadership. Welcome to the show, Kai.
Thanks, Kat. Great to be here.
It's great to be here. Just a little bit for the listening audience to know, we are both leaders for the Coactive Training Institute, or Coactive Training. I get it wrong. It's like it used to be the Coactive Coaching Institute, and I'll have to
I
check
do the
myself.
same
You
thing.
do, and it's like you know what I'm talking about. So I want to dive down into the Enneagram, but I had a curiosity. I just want to start here about the name of your business, Hive Leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's that about?
Back in 2010, I started Hive as a web development, social media, digital marketing company. And our pursuit
Hmm.
back then was to connect clients with their clients, and
Hmm.
hence the name Hive. Well, moving away from that, fast forward about, I don't know, 15 years, Monique decided to hang a shingle. I was still in corporate, but she decided to hang a shingle. And she was thinking, well, if I were to start a professional client services business with an emphasis on team coaching and leadership development and coaching, what would I call it? And she said, Hive just works. Because
That's
back,
so great.
when we first came up with Hive, it was about connection, collaboration, and community.
Mm, that's so
And
great.
that still works for us in the coaching business. So we kept it and we've thrived on that ever since.
I love that. And I'm curious, so you're in business with your wife. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, how's that? Like anything you want to tell us about that? I am also in business with my husband, and I just find it a very interesting way of life.
Yeah, I think interesting is a great way to put it, and especially because we have two very different personality patterns, which we could go in later when we
Mm,
into later when we talk about the end. But
great.
it's the best thing I've ever done. As a matter of fact, when I was thinking about going into coaching and getting coach trained, Monique and I actually got trained together at CTI at the Coactive Training Institute. Monique had been already coaching for about 30 years and she already
Oh,
had the
wow.
certification. Yeah. And when I started with CTI, I posed this question to her: wouldn't it be great if one of these days we decided to go into business together
Mhm.
and be in a coaching business, that we'd have the same vocabulary, the same come from, that we would be able to serve our clients consistently? And so we decided, okay, well, what the heck? So we went through coach training together. We ended up going through CTI leadership together.
Wow.
We went
That's
through
so
ORSC
cool.
training together and an ORSC certification. So we've done pretty much everything side by side. And then in 2022, I decided to leave the corporate world and join her full
Mm.
time in Hive. And we've been doing that ever since.
That
Yeah,
is so cool. A lot of similarities that you and I have, because Curtis and I also trained and we did ORSC, we did the leadership, and it is interesting because you're as you said. So I want to dive into the Enneagram because I am curious about,
sure.
first of all, just to know a little bit about it, but I think that would be really interesting to our listeners, like how it works for you and
Yeah.
your wife. So yeah, just a little overview for those who don't know about it.
Yeah.
And then,
The Enneagram is interesting because it's actually ages old. It came from mysticism and Sufism back in the day. So it's got its roots in some very spiritual aspects of being. And in the 1960s, some folks got together and decided to overlay psychology to it and create the Enneagram of personality, which is what we know of today. So, the Enneagram, if I were to
hmm,
just sort of bottom line this, it's an archetypal system that points to 9 distinct ways of being in the world. And those ways of being show up as patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving.
hmm,
Now, the distinction between the Enneagram and other personality assessments, which are awesome in their own right too, is that whereas a lot of personality assessments distinguish personality at the level of behavior,
hmm,
the Enneagram goes underneath that and really distinguishes personality types at the level of motivation. So each of the 9 Enneagram types makes a distinction between a core motivation and then the patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving that arise from that core motivation.
I'm really curious. Like, give me some examples.
Okay,
Like, what
so
are some, yeah, what are some ways we are motivated or that they
so
type
here's
that?
here's a great example. So I'm an Enneagram type 7,
Okay.
and that's called the epicure. It's also called the enthusiast. So my motivation arises from a worldview that the world is a place that's full of pain and constraints, and that can be avoided. So therefore, my
Mhm.
core motivation is to avoid those constraints, avoid pain. So I'm motivated instead to keep my options open, to seek
Mhm.
opportunities, to be able to see pleasurable possibilities in everything. And that shows up, for instance, in always being up and positive. So that's
Mhm.
one of the behavioral traits of an Enneagram type 7, is to always be positive, be energetic, be up and going. The thinking pattern is really about, well, what's next? Oh, I see an opportunity over there. And then the feeling pattern really is about suppressing negative feelings and replacing them with feelings of joy, with feelings of positivity. And so that's great, right?
I knew there was going to be another, like an and or a but here. Like, yes, and.
And a couple of things, especially where it comes to my coaching practice, I have to really check myself because I can be so future oriented and problem solving oriented in order to run away from the pain and the suffering,
Mm.
including that of my clients, that I may not always be as
Mm.
present as I could be. So I've worked on that a lot over the years, and thank goodness I'm a little more aware, at least a little more aware of it. But that's kind of how that motivation pattern sort of contributes to how I show up, and especially how I show up as a coach.
I love that. And how, so I'm trying to think how to this. So I'm just curious, how do you make those changes? Like, is there a training? Is there a way that, okay, I know my type, and now here are different ways that I can change my way I think or change the way that I behave. If the motivation, this is what I'm getting, the motivation stays the same. Is that right?
Yeah.
Like, this is how I'm motivated. So
Yeah.
the changes need to happen other places.
Well, I think about it this way. So, yes, your core motivation tends to stay the same from about the time you're in your mid 20s throughout your life. It just we all have a home base. We have access to all 9 types and all 9 motivations. But it's really about for us from a personal growth and development perspective is about expanding our range. And
Mm-hmm.
so being able to develop the awareness, the self-awareness to know how this pattern has served me over my life and how it limits me, and then what other choices I have based on perhaps other personality types. So I like to say to
Oh.
clients and I like to say to other coaches, the journey of the Enneagram is not to be the best type 7, who's me, the best
Mhm.
type 7 that I can be. My journey is actually to the center where I can have a 360 view of what other possibilities, which is perfect for my type possibilities, right? But what other
Right.
choices and what other actions in the moment are available to me that's not
Mm.
just my conditioned automatic and instantaneous reactions.
I love that. And so you said something. So that's I have an understanding now. So there's really, if you're on a personal growth path, especially, or a spiritual path, it's so helpful to have an understanding of yourself, but also how does this work in engaging with other people? So how have you found that you've been able to make changes? First, I'm going to ask as a coach, and then I'm really curious with your wife and business partner. But you said it could get in the way as a coach, or there's some ways that you've had to adjust.
Absolutely. So there's a number of different ways that the Enneagram helps with that. So first of all, developing deeper awareness about your own type, about its challenges and its opportunities. And,
Mhm.
essentially, why do I show up the way I show up? We
Hmm.
always kind of ask ourselves those questions, when I'm in a pickle, when I'm in the pinch, why do I show up this way? Sometimes, and here's where it gets dangerous, sometimes when we don't ask ourselves those questions, right? So that can become a little bit dangerous, but
Mm.
if you're really interested in growing and developing, that's the type of introspection that's required, is to say, okay, how is this pattern? I can see my pattern more closely in the moment as these things are happening to me, as I'm under stress, as I'm experiencing a challenge. And I can see how a particular part of my behavioral pattern is being driven by my thoughts and actions, and hence that my core motivation. So under developing that core understanding is the first place to start. But here's the beauty of the Enneagram. We're actually connected right away to 4 other types in the Enneagram. So the 2 types that are
Hmm.
adjacent to our type have an influence to how we show up. So for example, I'm a type 7, so the adjacent types are type 6 and 8. Now, the motivation of the type 6 is to anticipate possible danger and harm in order to keep safe, and to keep the group that of important people to me safe as well. So there's this motivation for safety and security on the 6 side. Now, on the 8 side, the motivation is to protect myself and others from injustice, to project strength,
Mm.
to avoid vulnerability, and to maintain a sense of control.
Wow. So
Very different
different.
motivations,
So
right?
different. Yeah. I mean, I'm already imagining how helpful having that combination, having some combinations would be.
Absolutely. And it depends on the situation or circumstance. So, in some circumstances, one might actually see some of one wing showing up more than another wing, or another wing showing up, or the opposite wing showing up. So, for instance, when I get anxious, I start exhibiting patterns of wanting safety and security from type 6. But one of the ways I deal with that is to push back against that anxiety. And then I become very controlling, like a type 8. So there's a dynamic that's
Oh,
happening
wow.
all at one time. So those are what we call the wings. The adjacent types to our core type have a direct influence on how we show up, and in some ways flavor our type. Now, there are 2 other types that we're connected to. And in the Enneagram, and I wish I could, for those of you who are listening to this podcast, Google Enneagram and see the figure. There
Yeah.
are 2 lines that connect our core type to different types. So one type is what we call the direction of integration, which is when we're secure, when everything's in flow for us, we tend to exhibit the high side of that type. So for instance, for type 7, for me, when I'm in flow, I can tend to resemble the high side of Enneagram type 5, which is the observer. Now, the motivation of the type 5 is to conserve energy and resources that can be used to understand the world. So
Wow.
think of sitting back on the sidelines, observing, taking in data, having our sense making machine going all the time. So sometimes also called the quiet observer. When I'm feeling in flow, I can be in my room tinkering with a concept, with an idea, practicing guitar for hours, working out problems, trying to work on a new business solution or a business product for clients. So I get really
Mm.
deep into that cave and I can emerge hours later and it only seems like a few minutes have passed. So
Mm.
that's my direction of security. Now, we also have a line that's connected to our point of stress, or sometimes called our point of disintegration. And when I'm stressed or challenged, I can start resembling Enneagram type 1, whose core motivation is to be good, to be right, to improve the world.
Mm.
And so I can become overly judgmental and critical, including and especially of myself.
Mm.
Type 1s have a really harsh inner critic. I can spot right away what's wrong or imperfect and be moved appropriately or inappropriately to take control and try to fix what I see as wrong. And I can do that in very sort of not so great ways. So
I love that. First, I just want to say I love how you're describing this. Is it sounds very much like it helps you to keep like your higher self, your higher mind, because you have an understanding. Because even as you're talking about your weaknesses, well, I hear a sense of humor you have about it. But there's also understanding, brings a lightness. It's no longer out of control. It doesn't feel so heavy. Is that one of the benefits of learning about your Enneagram type and kind of doing some studying about it? I mean, you have a wealth of information.
well, it's really amazing because this is why the Enneagram works so beautifully with coaching. Because what are we trying to do in
Let's talk
coaching is
about that.
develop self-awareness, you
Yes.
know? And as we develop awareness of how our internal operating system is working, however you want to look at it, through the lens of the Enneagram or through DISC or through deep exploration or meditation, then those things that have a grip on us tend to have to loosen their grip on it. Because
Mm-hmm.
now that we can see it, we can deal with it, we can work with it, we tend to loosen our grip on it as sort of our security blanket in a way. Yeah. And so the Enneagram really provides us with a lens to look at the world through, and also a mirror to mirror back how we're showing up
Mm-hmm.
and get underneath to the motivation as to why we're showing up the way that we are. So it's really about being able to see that and then make different choices, expanding our range and expanding, basically leaning into our self-authority to lean into a version of ourselves that's bigger than we even thought we were.
So I hear so many positive things, and I know you are in the process of creating an online course for
Yeah.
coaches. Is that right? So tell me about that. Tell us about that and like how you see coaches being able to use the
Yeah.
Enneagram with your course to improve their coaching, to help their clients.
Yeah, so my wife Monique and I are both certified Enneagram teachers through the narrative Enneagram tradition. It's one of the two schools that originated from the Berkeley Study Group back in the 60s.
Hmm.
And so we've been using the Enneagram for quite some time. As a matter of fact, because we're such Enneagram nerds, I guess you would say, we never get away from it. It's always in our conversations. We're
Mhm.
both coaches too. So we were thinking, what's a way that we can help coaches integrate and use the Enneagram in their coaching practice, expand their range of capabilities as coaches, perhaps even be able to differentiate with that to build their business and so on. And we kept on coming back to the saying that we have, which is who we are is how we coach.
Who we
So
are is how we coach. I'm going to underline this. Who we are is how we coach. I've never actually heard that statement.
yeah, it's
That's true. It's really true. There's a big bottom line truth to that.
so building on that, Kat, was really interesting
Mm.
because if we wanted to expand our range as leaders, as people in the world, we start with expanding internally first. And so
Right.
our program is aimed at, first of all, helping people get a base level foundational knowledge of the Enneagram and how it's used in coaching and the natural intersections it has with coaching. We have an entire module to our course which is still in design, by the way. We have our date is TBD, but the first one of the first modules in the course is transforming yourself as coach, growing your
Mhm.
range and growing your own capacity. And so doing your own work, experiencing the Enneagram on a personal level so that you can actually see how it works, to have a felt sense for how you can bring this to your
Yeah, that
clients.
is so important. I mean, this is aligns with my business course, business training course. You have to know yourself first. There's no way we can bring something to our clients without first having understanding. And as coaches, we have to, it's like an ongoing process of growing ourselves and understanding, which is one reason I'm excited about this for coaches, because I think we always need to keep on that growing edge. And what I hear you saying, Kai, is for this course and what you believe in, it has a real depth of understanding about impact, about how you show up in the world, and specifically for coaches about how you show up for your clients.
Absolutely. And it's really, in some ways, there's a leadership element to it.
Mhm.
And how we're leading ourselves in both in our lives, but also in our coaching practice and in our role as coach. We often say that coaches are leaders beside, shoulder to shoulder
Mhm.
with our clients, or leader behind, helping to backstop them as they're going after the thing that they want to go after. And so, from that aspect, knowing what we're capable of and being able to tap into those inner resources that we just naturally have really give us the expanded capacity and capability to support our clients in the journey that they're taking. Yeah.
Yep,
And,
absolutely.
and so we're not our type. We're a whole
Mhm.
amalgamation of
Mhm.
those types. It's a developing awareness and choice around, well, what can I go to now? you
Mhm.
know my client is in this spot and I'm in a very tender moment with this client. Perhaps as a type 7, my first inclination is to try to make things better you know
I heard that a little earlier, and I resonate with that. It's like, okay, we have to really watch out for that, right?
yes,
Because that's not what coaches do. That's not how we support our clients.
absolutely. And so being able to catch myself in the moment
Mhm.
and realize, oh, that's my pattern at work. Now it can loosen its grip on me and I can make a more intentional effort to be over there with my client in whatever it is that they're sharing and simply witness and not project sort of my need for comfort onto them.
And one thing I love that you're talking about here, because I work with coaches and you work with coaches, we know so often when there's something, I'm going to call it like sticky, like not quite working in a coaching relationship, coaches can often think, well, I'm not, maybe not being a great coach, as opposed to what you're saying is, oh, there's something personal about me here that is showing up in a coaching relationship, which makes sense because it's a relationship.
Absolutely. And this is again the thing that I love about the Enneagram and how we were trained in this is that you are not your type.
Right.
No personality pattern could ever come close to even estimating the
Mm.
entirety of who we are as people. And that's especially true as coaches. So when we see our type as a pattern, as kind of tire tracks that have been worn into this road that we travel, this road called life, if you want to get philosophical, we can start to forgive ourselves and cut ourselves some slack for and send ourselves some self-compassion and some love for the things that have happened in our lives that have contributed to these patterns happening. And then we can also say, hey, look, I don't have to stay in these tracks anymore.
Mm.
I can move a little bit to the right and I'll be a little bit higher on the road. And that's really the part about developing range and developing choice that really serves us as coaches is being able to
Mm.
say, I can get into the nuance of what's going on here now with myself. I can also help my clients with that too.
And just like building on this, so I get the piece about, and this is so enlightening to me. I mean, I so agree that this is what we all need as coaches are ways to grow ourselves and our awareness of ourselves. Is there also an aspect where it's beneficial for your clients to understand? Like, does that play into a coaching relationship where they now have an understanding of their Enneagram personality traits so that you can help coach them around that?
Yes, and I'm going to answer this in two ways. So first,
Okay, good.
First of all, I always start with an Enneagram, either a typing
Hmm.
interview or an Enneagram assessment, like the integrative Enneagram questionnaire, which I know a lot of coaches use, and it's a very powerful tool. It depends on the situation and circumstance and the client as to which I go to. Personally, I like taking clients through a typing interview. It's
Mm.
very powerful as an intake questionnaire of sorts to get to know my client better. So from just the ability to start my client introspecting and understanding why they show up the way that they show up,
Hmm.
and of course caveating that with, hey, you are the ultimate authority on your life, so
Right.
this assessment is an estimate. It's your job to go out and try this in the wild. So it kind of gets us into the coaching groove right away.
Mhm.
And it also helps them start seeing things through a lens of their patterns. And then once in a while, be able to encourage them to take those lenses off, take those glasses off and put on a different pair of
Yeah.
lenses.
Another perspective.
Absolutely. And we
Yeah.
do a lot of perspective work in
Yeah.
coaching.
Yeah. Yeah. We do.
Yeah. And then the other part is being able to understand what it is to be in relationship with people of different types. Now, we don't encourage people to type people. It's hard to discern personality just by interaction and by behavior.
And
And
we do it anyway, though, right? I've had so many people say,
yeah.
"Oh, you must be an Enneagram type such and such." It's like, I don't know. Don't be typing on me. Yeah.
Every time I've done it, I'd say 9 times out of 10, I'm wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But it's really kind of interesting to be able to really realize people don't get up in the morning and say, today I'm going to be a complete jerk to Kai. There's something perhaps in their pattern, in their personality that's having them do that, that's running in their
Mm.
internal operating system. And so being able to understand that we are all different types, we are all these
Mhm.
types and more, and we have this home
Mhm.
base, including you have a different home base than me, then I
Right.
can start cutting you a little bit more slack and I can start having more empathy for you as a life partner, as a friend, as a family member, as a coworker. So being able to use that in relationship. And it's interesting because Monique and I know each other's types very well,
I'll bet
which
you
is
do. And how does that work for you?
it's interesting because she's an Enneagram type 9, and her motivation is to keep the peace by
Aha.
seeking harmony and avoiding conflict. My type tends to be very conflict aware and willing to step into conflict. So knowing that her
Okay.
first reaction is to step away and
Mhm.
withdraw, and my first reaction is to step in, has been very helpful with us because, as being in business with your life partner, you're going to have you're going to have arguments, you're going to have disagreements, and the
Yeah,
whole point is to not have conflict.
that's
it's to
right.
it's to keep conflict productive,
I
right?
love that. Oh, I love that. Yes. I mean, my husband Curtis and I just had a conflict yesterday, and we were at the end of the day, we were so grateful because we were like, isn't it cool that we can have a conflict, make it through, and actually learn something and go, oh, I never actually didn't see it that way before. I didn't know that. It's a growth opportunity if you can lean into it.
Absolutely. And I have to tell you that over the years, because of Monique's influence on me, in some situations, I've become more 9-like and she's become more 7-like. So
Oh.
she's become, just to use simpler language, I've become more introverted and thoughtful
Mhm.
before I come out and say something. And she's been stepping more into the fire and becoming more extroverted.
That is really, really cool. So I'm getting from that is the more understanding we have of other people, the more we can take on like kind of some of their traits. Again, I love it. Not their, but like how they behave or maybe how they think. And our time is almost up.
Oh,
I want to
wow,
make,
that was
I know
fast.
it goes so fast. I'm like, so I'm definitely having you on the show again because I'm fascinated by this. And I know this course is not yet rolling out, but how can people find out? How can they maybe get on a list so that when it does roll out, they're ready to go? Because a lot of coaches are going to be, after hearing this today, like I am, they're going to be, ooh, I want this. I want to find out more.
Yeah, so we have our website, hiveleadership.com. So you folks that are listening can reach out and send me a note and get onto our mailing list.
Okay.
I do have a sign up sheet that I'm working on, explicit contact sheet. So if you're interested, you'd be the first ones to know. And Yeah, I would love to be back here again as we get closer
Oh,
and just,
great.
let people know where to sign up and what's involved. It's going to be an interesting, really interesting course. We're doing a combination of online virtual or online asynchronous, so video lessons, workbook lessons. We're going to be doing some live sessions every week,
Nice.
including practice coaching.
Oh,
And all this is wrapped in a community, and we have a community platform that we're using called Mighty Networks for people to
I
come
use that
interact.
too.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you know how powerful and how
Oh my
awesome
God.
that platform
It's
is.
amazing. It's just
Yeah,
amazing. So this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing my community and your community. There's some connection here. I'm getting this because coaches need all the support and help that we can get, and we need that connection.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Because,
next time
we
I have you
are.
back, we're going to dive down. I want to know more about how you train the coaches and like all that's in it, and really fascinating. Thank you so much for being here today and kind of bringing your wisdom and your enthusiasm and what your type 7 personality to our show.
You're so welcome,
Thanks.
Kat. Thanks for
Thanks,
having
Kai.
me and look forward to being with you again.
All right. Bye-bye.